The Hauler's Debt Plus Part 1. The call came at 3:47 a.m., a rasp older than the static. Caleb Walker cupped the CB mic and listened to a stranger who spoke like the Ozark fog itself, slow, clinging, cold. "Mr. Walker," the voice said, "we got a load needs movin', time-sensitive, pays triple." By 6 he'd kissed the crown of Ethan's messy hair and mumbled something fatherly about catching up on sleep. He didn't say he'd be threading mountain cuts before dawn for cash he couldn't explain. The Iron Widow, his battered Kenworth, idled at the curb like a horse that had learned the road's moods. He climbed in, shut the door that stuck in humid weather, and followed the napkin toward the Wachitas. Highway shouldered into hills. Pines closed ranks along the two-lane. The GPS kept certainty until the turnoff, an old logging road he'd passed 100 times without seeing. The unit blinked dumb and then went black. His phone announced no service like a joke. Caleb trusted what his father had called backbone sense. The compass, a driver earns when the map falls off the dash. At 2 miles, the trees loosened into a clearing where fog collected like thought. A 53-foot trailer crouched there without a tractor, a salt-scarred arc forgotten by any clerk. The paint had peeled away into islands of gray and rust. No dot numbers, no company, no warning stickers, only a low hum you felt first in your boots and then in your teeth. A manifest swung on a wire from the latch. The paper should have shredded in the weather, but it hadn't. The typewriter letters were crisp as judgment. March 17, 1975. Contents: dry goods, destination, Blackstone Cemetery, Hot Springs, AR. Delivery date: October 23, 2025. 50 years between the first stamp and the last. Caleb's mind tried on explanations and found none that fit. He stared into the trailer, seemed as if the gap would blink. It didn't. The hum throbbed faintly, a bass you could mistake for your own blood if you wanted to. He climbed back into the cab and reached for the shifter. That's when he saw the paper under the wiper blade he'd already used that morning, now pinched neat against the glass. He rolled the window down and plucked it free. The note was thin as onion skin and stubborn as law. Protocol for transport. Do not stop between dusk and dawn. Keep moving, no matter what you see or hear. If the weight shifts, say aloud, "I feel you there." Do not look back. Do not open the trailer until you reach the delivery point. If you hear knocking, knock back 3 times. No more, no less. Stay on Route 270 through Hot Springs. Avoid detours through Malvern or Arcadelphia. If someone signals for help, do not stop. They are not what they seem. The paper smelled like old books and iron. Caleb folded it along someone else's creases and slid it into the visor. He pulled out onto the rutted track, mirrors filling with the trailer's gray flank like a cliff packing him. The descent into trees muffled his diesel into a heartbeat. The hum in the trailer braided through it, so low you didn't hear it so much as wear it. He turned the radio up. The music gave the hum a metronome, not a muzzle. "I feel you there," he said aloud. He didn't believe in talking to machines or the unknown, but he believed in doing the thing that might keep a rig upright. The pull eased. The hum didn't fade. It settled deeper in, like breath that had decided to match his. A vibration buzzed against the cup holder. His phone lit to life long enough to spit a text from an unknown number. "Stay on 270. They're watching." Before he could thumb a reply, the message evaporated like a dream you can't drag into morning. He set the phone face down as if the screen were a thing that could see him back. At noon, a man stood next to a stalled pickup, waving both arms like a flag for mercy. Flannel jacket, jeans, ball cap, every detail ordinary until the grin. It arrived too soon, pulled too wide, teeth too even, like a photo retouched by somebody who hated faces. Caleb's foot grazed the brake, then lifted. Protocol. The Iron Widow rolled past. The man's grin followed them in the mirror for a 1/4 mile, the way bad weather follows a horizon. A mile later, the same man flagged him down by the same truck. Same wave, same grin. Caleb kept straight, hands light on the wheel the way you drove ice even when the asphalt was dry. By the fifth pass, the man stood in Caleb's lane, palms out in a crooked benediction. Caleb swerved. The trailer fishtailed and tucked itself back in with a thud like a hand slapped on a table. There was no impact. The man was gone, as if the lane had invented him to rehearse dread. "Who is this?" he asked, not trusting his throat to do the simple work of shape and air. "Lillian Walker, your aunt," the voice softened. "I died in '75, but I ain't gone, none of us are." Caleb worked his jaw. He had no Aunt Lillian in his living memory, only a father who had learned to drink names out of existence. "What am I hauling?" The question came out like a cough he'd meant to swallow. "Souls," Lillian said. 81 of us from the Covenant of Dawn. Brother Silas poured poison in jars and called it ritual. We drank. He called our deaths ascension. They loaded us in that trailer as if we were grain. They meant to take us someplace that bound us to him. That didn't happen." "Why me?" "You hear us. Blood listens to blood. Get us to Blackstone Cemetery before dark, on 270. Don't let them pull you off." "Them." "The followers that lived. The ones that learned how to grin like hunger." A pause, the CB crackled like a log splitting. "They get stronger in dark. In light they can only watch." Traffic thickened. A school bus sighed. Delivery vans angled into back alleys. The Iron Widow kept her lane like an old mare keeping pace through town. Inside the cab the hum grew sharper, like a whetstone dragging along a blade. The GPS sprang from the dead with a cheerful chime that set Caleb's teeth on edge. "Turn left now for fastest route," the voice cooed. MALVERN pulsed on the screen. The screen's colors oversaturated until the map looked like a fever. "Turn left now," the unit repeated, the cadence sliding from helpful to insistent to command. Smoke twined from the bezel, scented like burnt toast in fear. Caleb switched it off. It stayed on. He pulled the power cable. It stayed on. He flipped it over and pressed the power button until the map died like an eye closing under a thumb. The trailer slammed the cab wall hard enough to make the visor spit his folded protocol into his lap. A knock followed, a deliberate, careful striking that traveled his bones better than his ears. 3 knocks, spaced like someone counting their breaths. Caleb didn't want to answer. He also didn't want a haunt that knew the rules and decided to punish him for ignoring them. He knocked back 3 times. Silence fell, the full kind that contains a crowded room quieting at once. Then came a whisper, not one voice, but many speaking thank you in different tempos and accents, like a chorus of plains wind threaded through human shape. The day leaned toward evening with that quick drop only mountain towns know. Light kneeling down, temperatures falling off the edge of a table. Caleb checked his watch. 5:12 p.m. sunset at 6:30. He ran the math the way a driver does, distance measured not in miles but in lights and habits, and where traffic tended to clot on a Thursday. 20 miles to Blackstone if nothing else misbehaved. Things were already misbehaving. "Talk to me," he said into the cab as if the air were a person he could bargain with. "What happens if I'm late?" "We get taken back," Lillian said. "They'll lace us into the dark again. It'll be another 50 years taller and we'll be less of ourselves inside it." She paused. "And you, some of them will want to keep you. Blood works both ways." Caleb thought of Ethan, of a boy in a too-big hoodie solving problems with a stubborn grace that made Caleb proud and sad, because he knew he hadn't given his son easy years. He pictured the tuition number circled in red. He pictured the house where dishes mismatched because life had changed in a rush once and never bothered to match again. The road is a place where a man counts his debts more honestly than in his kitchen. Caleb counted fast and found nothing he could pay with except motion. He pressed his foot down, not rudely, but with a father's insistence. The Iron Widow answered with the low, loyal surge he loved. The trailer resisted for a heartbeat and then agreed. Hot Springs approached the way towns do when they've learned the world is haunted. Windows shuttering early, porches empty, yards cleared of toys. The gas station on the edge of the sprawl had 3 cars at the pumps and 2 at the air hose. The people moving there didn't look up when Caleb laid on the horn to warn a kid rolling too close. The boy turned his head without turning his body, eyes blunt as coins, then pivoted away like a puppet remembering its string. In the tree line they waited, bell-bottoms wet at the hem, fringed vests dark with damp, faces set in that wrong smile, their mouths trying too hard to be welcome and arriving at something predatory. Lillian murmured on the CB, words like a hand to the back. Close now. Gates a few minutes past the sign. Don't stop for anything that looks like help. The sky bruised into storm colors. Thunder carried from one ridge to the next like gossip. The first fat drops of rain smacked his windshield and began the work of turning the road to a mirror. The wipers jumped. The note in his visor shivered in the breeze from the vent. The hum in the trailer gathered itself the way a choir does in the bar before the conductor raises his hand. The GPS blinked on again to offer a new lie, accident ahead. Detour through Arcadelphia saves 12 minutes. The voice this time was not a voice from the unit. It was a voice that had borrowed the unit, using its speaker like a throat. Turn now, turn now, turn now. The unit smoked. Caleb shoved it into the glove box and shut the lid like a coffin. A semi drifted into his lane at the merge, a silver tractor with no plates and no company logo, its grille smiling too wide. It crowded him toward the guardrail. The Iron Widow's horn blared, long and low, a freight sound. The silver rig kept coming as if proximity were a sacrament. Caleb had a half-second to choose between brake and steel. He chose steel. The Iron Widow's shoulder kissed the rail, sparks stitched the air. The silver tractor faded, not back but out, its paint thinning, its edges blurring. Then it wasn't there. The smell of hot metal remained like bad breath. Keep straight, Lillian said, as if she could see through his eyes. They can't hold shape in rain long. For a beat the world narrowed to 3 things: the ticking clock on his dash, the wet gleam of the iron teeth ahead, and the pressure at his back that felt like 81 people bracing with him. He thought of Ethan again, of a kid who believed that every hard problem had a lever somewhere if you diagrammed it right. Caleb had never found many levers, only wheels and roads and the long arithmetic of miles. Maybe this was a lever, a ridiculous one made of diesel and stubbornness, and a note tucked into a visor. In the mirror the trailer's edge wavered as if heat lived inside it instead of cold. The CB whispered with breath, not quite words, and between those breaths he heard another sound he had tried not to name, breathing from the trailer itself, deep and measured, like a sleeping thing learning how to wake kindly. The figures at the gate shifted, some stepping back, some stepping forward, unsure whether to believe in the rain, in the light, in the nerve of a man who refused to turn. Caleb rolled his shoulders once, setting the ache there like a pack he'd chosen. He eased his foot, then gave the Iron Widow more, not recklessly, but with the particular mercy of a man who means to be on time for strangers he cannot afford to fail. Keep straight, Lillian said, as if she could see through his eyes. They can't hold shape in rain long. The Hauler's Debt plus Part 2. Rain boiled across the windshield in sheets that fluttered like torn canvas. The Iron Widow took the narrowing lane toward Blackstone Cemetery as if drawn on a wire. Caleb kept his jaw set, his hand steady. The hum from the trailer had become a chord that vibrated the air in the cab, a sound you felt more than heard, the way you feel a train before you see it. Lightning stitched the ridge. For an instant the iron gate stood plain, and the crowd gathered there turned their faces toward his headlights like a field turning to the sun. Then the sky blinked and the gate receded, no longer 30 yards away, but a football field. The road lengthened under his wheels as if someone had hooked the asphalt and yanked. What did they just do? Caleb asked, not sure if he spoke to Lillian or himself. He kept going. The Iron Widow shoved rain aside. The lane between oak limbs unfurled like a ribbon that didn't want to be finished. Puddles became ponds, then seemed to shrink back into puddles as the headlights reached them, as if the road itself were thinking about how much water to carry. Figures moved ahead and then didn't. In the wiper's sweep he saw them, men and women in damp 70s clothes, fringes plastered to sleeves, hems sucking mud. Their smiles were wrong in a way that had become familiar. A white suit waited among them, softly luminous in the storm, the man inside it taller than he had any right to be. Caleb didn't. He gave the Iron Widow more throttle. The diesel bellowed, the trailer answered. The lane slick narrowed further, crowding him with stacked stone and old trees. In the side mirror he saw the trailer's gray flank ripple as if wind lived inside it, not rain. "Silas," Caleb said, tasting copper that wasn't blood. Something clanged on the roof with a sound like pipe dropped from a ladder. Caleb flinched. The lane unrolled and then tried to tie itself into a knot. The asphalt curved left, then right, then left again, tighter each time like a serpent coiling under him. Caleb downshifted and leaned into the rhythm that keeps a heavy rig upright. The trailer tugged hard right on the second coil. He said, "I feel you there," and the pull eased not with obedience but with recognition. The Iron Widow's tires hit a seam where roots had shouldered the asphalt into a ridge. The trailer bounced and slammed the cab wall. The visor spit the folded protocol into his lap again. He didn't need to read it. Rules live differently once you've obeyed them under duress. They become bones. The uniform's face looked right until it found its grin. Caleb downshifted, watching the speed bleed without letting it die. The man stepped closer, blue light washing over his badge. The numbers on the badge rearranged themselves when the strobe hit them, like ink refusing to hold still. The deputy's mouth moved, but the words reached Caleb out of sequence, fragments delivered by the storm. "Inspection, trailer, dangerous. Step out of the..." The last word broke apart as if the rain itself had decided to swallow it. "You're keeping good company," Lillian said. "He doesn't like it." "Who does?" Caleb muttered, but the relief that followed scraped at him. Relief is when you notice how scared you were. They reached the mouth of a bridge, where the lane narrowed tighter between rails slick with algae. The river below boiled brown and fast. At the far end of the bridge, a man stood in the lane with a flare, its orange spit wild in the rain. The flare made his smile flicker like something malfunctioning. He swung the light in a slow arc that said stop in a language older than the dot. Another cruiser idled behind him, this one with its trunk open. Spikes lay ready, long metal teeth waiting to drink. Caleb could stop, he could argue. "Thank you," someone whispered on the CB. A child's voice braided into a woman's and then into a man's, all of them the same word. The bridge's end arrived. The cruiser and the flare man did not. They went out like a candle in a wind none of them acknowledged. Caleb drove into the trees again, rain easing to a heavy mist that hung low over the road like a thinking thing. Lillian exhaled on the other end of the radio. Brother Silas came off a revival circuit with a magic smile and a borrowed Bible. "I was tired and wanted to be better than what I was," Lillian said simply. "I didn't expect murder to feel like permission." The CB hissed as if embarrassed by the weather. Caleb's throat felt tight around the fact that this woman wore his last name without a wedding or a birth to grant it. "Why the cemetery?" he asked. "Why not a church?" "Churches belong to men," Lillian said. "A thing like us needed the old ground, the kind folks visit for a while and then leave be. Names cut in stone, families who still say them sometimes. Consecrated is a word men use. What we need is remembered." He drove through town streets that had decided to forget him. Houses kept their curtains. The rain eased, but the road steamed as if it had decided to keep some of the water for heat. The Iron Widow's tires hissed. The trailer's hum held. The clock performed its arrogant work. 5:41. Caleb kept straight. The signboard stuttered. The arrow flipped direction. Detour left arrow. Then it died, letters collapsing into a jumble that spelled nothing and too much. He breathed through his teeth and inched the Iron Widow forward. The wrecker ahead pulled past the barrels with theatrical care, like a magician palming a coin. The semi behind him huffed impatience. The CB coughed up a male voice thick with ridicule. "You missed your turn, Walker." "Who is this?" A chuckle answered, a sound without a chest to come from. "You're haulin' our investment. Come on home to the ridge. We got places to put you." Caleb's knuckles whitened against the wheel. He considered answers and threw them aside. You don't argue with thunder or men who think they own the dead. He took the construction lane with millimeters to spare. The barrels tasted his mirrors and rolled away like offended fruit. The backhoe's teeth lifted a fraction as he passed, as if the machine had decided to wake. The bucket slammed down inches behind the trailer's bumper. The Iron Widow jumped forward as if the ground had bitten her. Caleb's foot found the brake by reflex. Human fear is a hand that pulls you toward it. Lillian's voice arrived in his ear a half-second behind the impulse. "Don't." He looked right at the woman because to look away would feel like sin. Her mouth opened around the word again. Rain took the edges off her face. Her eyes were wrong, flat, and coin-dull, but what made Caleb decide wasn't her eyes. It was the line of her shoulders. There was no tremor there, no shiver. The fear didn't reach her body. It only wore her face. A rail crossing loomed ahead, lights dark, arms stuck up. The tracks shone slick. Caleb eased over them. Halfway across, the lights erupted into red. And the bells started their metallic panic. The arms jerked down as if a giant had remembered to pull the string. A horn blew, close, vast, final. Headlights too bright, too white, swelled in his side mirror. The Iron Widow was a beetle under a moving boot. He could not clear the crossing before the train. He could not back up with a loaded trailer and a semi on his tail. He could not. He breathed once and the word changed. He would. He gave the Iron Widow everything. The engine took it, coughed once in protest, and then answered. The trailer dragged as if the rails had decided to hold it. The horn bore down, a wall of noise with a steel body. The white light grew, grew, grew. For an impossible instant the light filled his mirror and then his cab, as if the train had climbed inside with him. "Feels like it's doing me," Caleb said, but his hands remembered solidity. He kept the rig centered and let the town fold around him. Hot Springs was a collage of brick and steam and tourist hopes, but tonight it looked like a place that had made itself small to let something larger pass through. He turned onto a frontage road that paralleled 270 for 3/4 of a mile, if the map in his head was still true. The frontage dead-ended into a chain-link fence. "Gate," Caleb said, as if nomming it might change it. He cut the Iron Widow at an angle so the trailer blocked as little traffic behind him as possible and set the brake. He stepped down into the rain, which had cooled into a fine pinprick mist, and walked to the chain. The lock looked official. It also looked weary. "What do you need?" he asked the dark without asking anyone to prove anything. He pulled onto the highway again. The world felt bigger and smaller at once. The clock went to 6:07. The mist thinned. The road curved toward a swath of black trees and stone. The sign for BLACKSTONE appeared, damp and honest. The CB snapped like a dry twig thrown into a fire. A new voice came through, brisk, professional, threaded with the kind of caution that has learned the price of taking a step without looking. "Caleb Walker, do not be alarmed. This is Detective Sarah Klein with Garland County. If you can hear me, maintain your speed and stay on 270. Do not attempt to contact me at this time." Caleb glanced at the radio as if it were a person who had surprised him in his kitchen. "How?" "Your dispatcher reported a hijack anomaly on your route," Klein said, talking through him the way cops do when their words have to arrive in the right order. "We have reason to believe you're being targeted by individuals connected with historical disappearances from 1975. Keep moving. Repeat, if you see a white-suited male at any choke points, do not engage. We are in motion." He didn't know if she could hear him. He talked anyway. "I'm 2 miles from the cemetery." "Copy," Klein said. "We have units staging. If weather permits, I'll intercept at the gate." "That tracks," Klein answered dry. "Keep moving." The line fizzed. Lillian came back in softer. She sounds like her daddy. Didn't know her then. Folks like that always come later. The last mile stretched like a rubber band. The trees leaned in. The cemetery gate waited, iron teeth wet, stone pillars ancient and unimpressed. Figures massed on the road again, a soft-moving congregation that parted late and without apology. Silas stood among them as if he had invented weather. His white suit was less white now, rain flattening it against a shape that didn't hold still. He raised his hand again in that not to halt, not to wave gesture. "Don't slow," Lillian said, iron and silk. "You don't bow to a snake because it learned to stand." He didn't. He aimed for the gap that was barely there and trusted motion to make the rest. Caleb let the rig roll forward into the first clearing, a square of ground the grass had quit, encircled by graves. The hum behind him surged into a deeper chord, then settled to a hush that made the hair on his neck lift. The clock said 6:18. He could feel sunset massing, gathering itself like a held breath, close enough to call but not close enough to claim. He set the brake. The world cinched tight around him in the strange quiet that follows chaos. In the mirrors, the road behind nested in shadows. At the gate, in the distance, something white waited without patience. What else is there to try? The Hauler's Debt plus Part 3. The cemetery road curled between leaning stones, their inscriptions blotted by moss and rain. Caleb eased the Iron Widow forward, every gear shift deliberate. The hum from the trailer had quieted to a pulse, steady as a heartbeat, as though the 81 souls inside knew how close they were. Yet the closer he drew, the heavier the air pressed against him. This was not silence, but anticipation sharpened into a blade. At the first bend the CB hissed. Lillian's voice emerged ragged, strained. "He's still in here. He won't let go until the ground takes us." Caleb's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "Then we finish it." A flicker of white darted through the headstones. Brother Silas no longer stood at the gate. He prowled inside, slipping from shadow to shadow. His grin bloomed whenever the lightning caught him, a cut in the dark. He was not whole. He was a wound given legs. The Iron Widow's headlights cut across the central clearing. The patch of barren earth waited like an altar. Caleb braked, set the rig in place, and climbed down into mud that swallowed his boots. Cold clawed his breath white. The lock at the trailer doors gleamed, wet and expectant. From the tree line, disciples gathered. Dozens, maybe hundreds, their faces washed blank by rain except for the grin, always the grin. Their clothing shifted through decades, some in bell-bottoms, others in denim jackets too new for 1975. They filled the cemetery aisles like parishioners awaiting a sermon. Caleb's hand closed around the padlock. Before he could twist it, Silas's voice rang from the dark, close as if whispered against his ear. "Open it for me, Caleb. You know they're mine. I promised them ascension, and you're just the mule carrying my gospel." The CB crackled, but it was not Lillian this time. A chorus of whispers answered him. "Thank you, Caleb. Don't let him, please." The weight of 81 voices pressed through the steel. Caleb lifted his chin, his hand burning from the cold metal. "Not yours," he said. "Not anymore." He snapped the lock open. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Silas screamed, a sound like tearing metal, and the disciples surged forward. Figures darted between headstones, rushing closer with inhuman speed. Caleb flung the doors wide. For a moment the trailer yawned empty. Then the air thickened, swirling with light that broke free in threads, then shapes, faces, hands, children clinging to mothers' skirts, men with tired eyes. They poured from the trailer not downward but upward, rising in columns of pale fire. The storm wind caught their glow and lifted it higher. Lillian appeared among them, her face sharp with relief. "You did it," she said, her voice echoing like bells. "You brought us home." The ground shook. The disciples shrieked, clutching their heads as the light seared across them. Brother Silas staggered into the clearing, his white suit dripping shadow instead of water. His face flickered, young one moment, skeletal the next. He reached for the rising souls, but they burned through his fingers. "They were mine," he roared. "They believed in me." "You poisoned them," Caleb said, standing firm between Silas and the trailer. "You don't own belief, you only stole it." The spirits rose higher, their glow flooding the cemetery. The disciples melted back, their grins faltering, their shapes unraveling like smoke in a wind. Silas staggered, his voice cracking into a scream. He lunged for Caleb, his hands twisting into claws. Headlights cut the night. Two sheriff SUVs skidded into the clearing, light bars strobed red-blue across the stones. A black sedan followed, tires spitting gravel. Detective Sarah Klein stepped out, rain plastering her coat, badge gleaming. Deputies fanned out with rifles raised. "Silas," she shouted, her voice steady over the storm. "It's over. Your covenant ends tonight." The prophet's shape flickered in the strobe, half solid, half absence. He hissed, eyes two black voids. "You can't stop what I began." Sarah leveled her sidearm. "Watch me." The disciples broke, scattering into the tree line, shadows unraveling under the flood of light. Silas shrieked and lunged again, but the souls intercepted him. Lillian stepped forward, her glow fierce. "You took our lives. You don't take our freedom." She reached through him. Silas convulsed, his white suit darkening as though ink spilled across it. His scream tore through the cemetery, shredding into static, and then he was gone, snuffed like a candle. Only rain remained. The last of the souls rose higher, their light fatting into the storm clouds. Caleb watched them vanish, breath caught in his chest. Lillian lingered longest. She touched her hand against his cheek, though he felt only cold air. "Thank you," she whispered, "for remembering us." Then she too was gone, and the trailer behind him sagged. Rust bloomed in seconds. The walls collapsed inward with a hiss, dissolving into dust. 50 years fell away in a heartbeat. Caleb stood shaking, rain coursing down his face, when Sarah Klein approached. She holstered her weapon and regarded him with sharp, weary eyes. "We've been chasing the Covenant of Dawn for decades," she said. "My father worked the case until it killed him. Tonight, you just gave them justice." Caleb glanced at the ashes of the trailer. "Justice or mercy, I don't know, but they're free." Sarah nodded. "And Silas's people won't stop, but now we have proof. Names, evidence, witnesses, even if they're not breathing." She paused. "You're part of this now, Walker, whether you like it or not." He didn't answer. His eyes were on the road beyond the cemetery. Rain misted in sheets. Somewhere out there, Ethan was waiting at home, safe for now. That was enough. But deep in his gut, Caleb knew this was only the beginning. The Hauler's Debt plus Part 4. The storm had passed, but the air over Blackstone Cemetery still carried the weight of thunder. Caleb leaned against the Iron Widow, soaked and trembling, watching the last of the deputies sweep the grounds with flashlights. Sarah Klein stood near the crumbled remains of the trailer, jotting notes into a leather-bound pad, her expression half focus, half grief. "You should get inside your rig," she told him without looking up. "You're cold." Caleb didn't move. "He's not gone." Sarah's eyes lifted. "Silas." Caleb nodded. "That scream he left, but not for good. People like him don't die, they wait." Sarah exhaled slowly as though she'd expected the answer. "Then we hunt him. Garland County doesn't close its books because a corpse doesn't stay put." She closed the pad with a snap. "You delivered 81 souls tonight. That's more than the law's managed in 50 years, but you're not finished." Caleb almost laughed. The sound came out flat. "I never am." By dawn, the cemetery was empty except for him. Sarah and her team had gone, promising to contact him once they organized evidence. Caleb sat behind the wheel of the Iron Widow, staring at the cemetery gates in the rearview. The cab smelled of damp earth and diesel. For a long time he couldn't bring himself to start the engine. The CB crackled. A woman's whisper filled the space, Lillian's voice, faint but clear. "Don't stop, Caleb, there's more." He closed his eyes. "I know." Coordinates appeared on his phone, glowing through the cracked screen. Oklahoma, Kiamichi Mountains, October 24, 1934, 29 souls. The highway west stretched wide and empty, dawn painting the sky in copper and bruised blue. Caleb drove with the silence of a man sentenced. Each mile felt heavier than the last. He should have turned toward Little Rock, toward Ethan, toward the comfort of a home that smelled of coffee and textbooks. Instead, he pressed on, knowing what the coordinates demanded. The Kiamichi Mountains rose jagged on the horizon, dark teeth biting into the morning. The coordinates led him off the interstate, onto backroads scarred with potholes and weeds pushing through broken asphalt. When the GPS died again, he didn't curse. He expected it. He drove by the numbers scrawled on a fresh napkin, just as before. At the end of a gravel trail, he found the second trailer. This one was smaller, 40 feet, paint the color of dried bone. Its tires were sunk half into the earth as though the ground had tried to eat it. The manifest flapped in the wind. Dated, April 5, 1934. Destination, Oak Hollow, Oklahoma. Delivery date, October 24, 2025. The trailer hummed. Not the low, steady bass of the first, but something fractured, like a song played out of tune. Caleb backed the Iron Widow into place, hooked the lines, and felt the weight of 29 souls settle into the rig. They were lighter than 81, but the grief pressed heavier, as though time had given them teeth. A note fluttered against the latch. He tore it free. Protocol for transport, 1934 consignment. Do not stop for trains, they are his. If children call your name, do not answer. Keep your mirrors covered until dawn. If you smell lilacs, hold your breath. Stay on Highway 259. Detours lead to graves not marked on maps. Caleb folded the note and slid it into the visor. He started the engine. The Iron Widow growled like she knew what she carried. The mountain road wound narrow, hemmed by rock on one side and ravine on the other. Rain threatened again, clouds smothering the morning sun. The hum inside the trailer scraped against his bones. This time the voices came quicker, whispers in old accents, dust bowl tones and drawls, fragments of hymns sung off-key. The ghosts of 1934 carried their suffering loud. Caleb gripped the wheel. I feel you there, he said. The voices stilled to a dull murmur like wind pausing to listen. Halfway through the pass, children appeared on the shoulder. 4 of them barefoot, dressed in Depression-era rags. They waved at him, smiling with mouths too wide. Mr. Walker, they called in unison, voices sweet as rot. Play with us. His blood iced. He hadn't told them his name. Don't, Lillian warned faint on the CB. They're not what they look like. The children's smiles twisted. Their eyes darkened to pits. They ran alongside the rig with impossible speed, bare feet slapping gravel without slowing. Caleb kept his gaze forward. The Iron Widow roared, outpacing them. In the mirror he glimpsed their faces stretch into monstrous shapes before dissolving into mist. Night fell too quickly in the mountains. Caleb drove by headlight beams alone, Highway 259 unfolding like a scar. His mirrors were covered by cloth, but he still felt the pressure of eyes crawling along the sides of the trailer. At 11:17 p.m., the scent of lilacs filled the cab, sweet, cloying, wrong. He held his breath until his chest burned, refusing to inhale. The scent vanished. At midnight, the hum in the trailer surged into a pounding rhythm. The cab shook. A knocking rattled the steel, sharp and fast. Caleb knocked back 3 times. The noise stopped. Then came a whisper, softer than breath. Thank you. The words were a blade and a bomb. He drove harder. Oak Hollow lay at the bottom of a valley, a half-forgotten town of 20 houses, their windows boarded, their streets drowned in weeds. At its center waited a cemetery, iron gates half-eaten by rust. Caleb pulled in, headlights painting crooked crosses and leaning stones. The trailer's lock came away under his hands. He threw the doors wide. Light spilled out, fewer souls than before, but brighter, sharper, burning white against the night. Men with gaunt faces, women clutching bobbies, children barefoot and pale. They rose into the air like stars torn free. The hum ceased. The trailer collapsed inward, dust scattering across the graves. But this time, something remained. A shadow lingered, coalescing into a tall man in suspenders and a preacher's collar, his eyes hollow pits, his mouth twisted into a grin. "Brother Amos," Lillian whispered through the CB, her voice trembling. He was Silas's teacher. The prophet raised his hand toward Caleb. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of lilacs. Caleb staggered, choking. Amos smiled wider. 1 debt paid, 19 more. Then he was gone, leaving only silence and the ache of unfinished work. Caleb collapsed against the Iron Widow, gasping. The cemetery lay still, but the night carried promise of more trailers, more souls, more prophets waiting. He knew then the debt would not end with Silas or Amos. It stretched back a century, maybe more. And it would end only when he had hauled them all home. The Hauler's Debt plus Part 5. Caleb Walker didn't sleep the night after Oak Hollow. He parked the Iron Widow at a rest stop off Highway 69, sat in the cab with the engine idling low, and watched the dawn bleed across Oklahoma's horizon. His hands wouldn't stop shaking, even when he pressed them flat to his thighs. The scent of lilacs clung to his clothes, though the night was gone. Amos's grin hovered in his mind like a brand. The CB crackled, silence first, then whispers rising together. Lillian's voice came last, calm but grave. "You see it now, Caleb. Silas wasn't the root, Amos was, and there are others." Caleb pinched the bridge of his nose. 19 more trailers. "Yes," Lillian said. "They're scattered across Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, each one a massacre, each one hidden so long the ground itself remembers." Caleb looked at his reflection in the windshield. His eyes were bloodshot, older than yesterday. "I'm not sure I can survive 19 more." "You don't have to survive," Lillian said. "You just have to drive." 2 days later, coordinates dragged him north into Missouri. A 1921 manifest waited there, the trailer sunken into the earth like a coffin refusing burial. 37 souls. Their whispers were faint, strained, as if time had thinned them to threads. The note pinned to the latch read, "If you hear a hymn, do not hum along." The delivery nearly killed him. The trailer shook so violently near midnight that one of his axles screamed, and every hymn his mother had ever sung clawed at the back of his mind. He gritted his teeth, refused to hum, and drove until the Black River Cemetery took the load. When the souls rose, they sang, not a hymn of death, but something raw and joyful, a sound that lifted him despite himself. The trailer collapsed to dust at dawn. Amos appeared again, his grin wider, his voice filling the CB like a sermon through rotten speakers. "You weaken us with each delivery, but every road takes you closer to me. When you finish, I'll be waiting at the last gate." Caleb didn't answer. He turned the radio off and kept moving. By November, Caleb had delivered 5 trailers. His beard grew ragged, his hair streaked white. Each run carved another year out of his body, though only weeks passed. The Iron Widow gleamed brighter, her engine stronger, as if the souls themselves reinforced her steel. Sometimes in the mirror, he saw lights flicker in the trailer even before he hooked it, souls ready to travel. Sometimes he heard voices in the cab at night, whispering his name in gratitude or warning. Ethan noticed the changes. "Dad, you look older," he said one morning at the kitchen table, staring at him across coffee cups and homework. "Like 10 years older." Caleb forced a smile. "Long hauls, bad sleep." Ethan frowned. "You're hiding something, I can feel it." Caleb wanted to tell him everything, that their blood bound them, that only they could hear the dead. But the thought of Ethan behind a wheel with ghosts in the trailer hollowed him with fear. He swallowed the truth and said only, "You just focus on school. Let me handle the road." December brought snow. In the Ozarks, a trailer dated 1899 waited, its manifest written in ink so faded it looked like smoke. 22 souls, victims of a fire in a revival tent. Their whispers were sharp, frantic, like people still choking on smoke. Caleb hauled them through sleet, every gust threatening to push the Iron Widow off icy curves. At one point, flames bloomed in the mirror, phantom fire chasing the trailer. He nearly panicked, but Lillian whispered steady, "It's memory, not truth. Keep driving." He delivered them to a churchyard buried in snow. The souls rose in streaks of firelight that burned clean against the storm. For the first time, Caleb saw joy in their release. The trailer crumbled to ash before it hit the ground. But Amos was waiting, standing at the cemetery gate in his suspenders and collar, snow passing through him without melting. "You're thinning me, Walker," he said, "but you're thinning yourself faster. I can wait." Caleb spat into the snow. "Then wait, I'll still finish." The more he delivered, the more the world changed around him. Gas stations turned hollow, cashiers moving like puppets, cars idling without drivers. Some towns acted like they'd never seen him, though headlights passed him on the road. Once, outside Joplin, he realized every billboard carried the same message: turn back. The letters changed color with each mile, but the words stayed the same. Still he drove. By March, 10 trailers were gone, hundreds of souls freed. Each time Amos appeared, his shadow stronger, his voice louder. And each time Caleb answered the same way, with motion. But his body was failing. His hands trembled constantly. His hair had gone white. Ethan begged him to see a doctor. Caleb just smiled, too tired to argue. The coordinates for the 11th trailer came on a night soaked in thunder. Mississippi, 1912. 54 souls drowned in a flood. The trailer groaned with water weight, though it was dry. Every mile he heard the roar of a river pressing against steel. When he reached the cemetery on a bluff above the river, the trailer doors burst open before he touched them. Water poured out, freezing him in place, then dissolved into mist as the souls ascended. He fell to his knees, drenched, gasping, knowing he had nearly drowned on dry land. "Closer," Amos whispered. "You're nearly hollow now." By summer, 19 trailers had fallen to dust. Each delivery left Caleb weaker, the Iron Widow stronger. She gleamed like new steel under the sun, though she was decades old. Her engine purred like a lion at rest. Sometimes, when he touched the wheel, he felt a pulse. She was alive now, carrying the dead as if it were her birthright. The last coordinates came on a blistering July night. Arkansas again. The Ouachita Mountains, where it had begun. The manifest, July 4, 1875. 90 souls, the first massacre, the root. Lillian's voice filled the cab, clear and resolute. "This is the last, Caleb. Amos waits there. So do the others. Every prophet that fed on blood will be watching. You finish this and the dead is done." Caleb gripped the wheel. "And if I do?" "Then Ethan inherits it," Lillian said quietly. "Blood calls to blood." Caleb's chest ached. He whispered his son's name like a prayer. Then he put the Iron Widow in gear. The road into the Ouachitas was narrow, winding, half devoured by roots. The trailer behind him thrummed like a storm contained. The closer he drew to the coordinates, the heavier the air pressed. Figures lined the tree line, grinning disciples dressed from every decade, their eyes black, their mouths stretched too wide. They whispered his name as he passed. At the clearing, the last trailer waited. Its paint was gone, its frame skeletal, but it hummed with terrible power. The manifest clung to the door. Paper so thin it looked etched from air. Caleb hooked it with hands that trembled. 90 souls settled into the Iron Widow. The cab groaned under their weight. His vision blurred. Amos stood at the far end of the clearing, his grin sharp enough to cut. "Welcome, Walker. You've brought them all to me." Caleb stepped down from the cab, rain soaking his face though the sky was clear. "Not to you," he said. "Home." Amos laughed, the sound shaking the trees. Behind him, other prophets flickered into being, Silas in his white suit, a dozen more in old coats and collars, men who had killed and called it holy. They formed a line, shadows waiting for the trailer's doors to open. "Open them," Amos said, "and they rise with me." Caleb shook his head. They rise free. He yanked the lock. The doors blew wide. Light surged out, brighter than any delivery before. 90 souls erupted into the sky, blazing like a second dawn. Their glow seared the prophets, unraveling their forms into smoke. Amos screamed, clutching his chest as if the light tore through him. Lillian appeared, radiant, her voice ringing clear. The debt is paid. The Iron Widow roared, her engine revving without Caleb's hand. Light burst from her headlights, her frame glowing white-hot. The prophets dissolved, their screams fading into silence. Amos staggered, his grin gone, his eyes wide with rage. "This isn't over," he spat. "I'll wait in the dark." Then he vanished, torn apart by the rising souls. The trailer collapsed into dust. The clearing fell silent. Only the Iron Widow remained, gleaming, alive. Caleb dropped to his knees, his vision blurred to black. He thought of Ethan, his boy's laugh, his stubborn frown, the way he tapped his pencil when he solved problems. He whispered, "It's done." Darkness took him. He woke in his own bed days later, Ethan sitting at his side. The boy's eyes were red from sleepless nights. "Dad." Caleb tried to speak, his throat rasped. "How long?" 3 days, Ethan said. "They found you in the truck outside town, engine still running, no trailer." Caleb nodded faintly. He looked toward the window. For a heartbeat he saw Lillian's face there, smiling. Then she was gone. Ethan leaned closer. "What happened, Dad? Where did you go?" Caleb closed his eyes. "I brought them home." Weeks passed. Life crept back in small ways, coffee, mornings, bills. But sometimes, late at night, Caleb sat behind the Iron Widow's wheel and felt her engine pulse like a heartbeat. The road called. 19 trailers had turned to dust. Hundreds of souls were free. The debt was paid. Or so he told himself. Because some nights the CB still crackled, and a voice, low, patient, terrible, whispered, "I'm still waiting, Walker." And Caleb knew the road was never truly done.